very pleasant day, everyone. This is Sandra Lepi de Leon, and I am one of the representatives from my group to discuss with you the Chapter 7, which is the Managing Total Compensation and Other Related Matters. So, with me is Miss Wina Timon and Miguel Imbon to discuss and elaborate more, explain more, and make you understand about this matter. But before that, I'm going to read all the learning objectives so that we can go on with the flow. So here I can say that this is just after studying this one, we are going to, or we should be able to discuss how to budget and administer compensation strategically, describe the issues affecting the pay model, discuss the two approaches in controlling average cash compensation, name and define the most popular pay system controls, outline the steps in communicating the compensation plan and system of the organization. So I hope you will understand and you will deepen your knowledge after our video or after this video reporting that we are going to do. So to start with, let's start with managing the system. Financial conditions of the organization, the competitive pressures it faces, and budgeting are important factors to consider in managing total compensation. The cost implications of actions such as updating the pay structure, increasing merit pay, or instituting gain sharing are critical for making sound decisions. Consequently, budgets are an important part of making compensations. So in creating compensation budgets, employers should ensure that basic company pay policies are considered. There are rules and regulations that we need to follow. That is very, very basic. From our organization, we need to follow those things. It is not just as easy as a piece of cake that you are going to pinpoint who are going to have the increase or who are going to have none. So to continue, increase in market rates should be budgeted according to the contributions of employees to the organization's success instead of just merely giving automatic yearly increases. This is what I'm saying earlier. Now, trade-offs also occur over short-term versus long-term incentives, pay increases based on performance, and based on how long they stay in the organization. I know that you already know about this, so I'm not going to explain everything from that moment. And cash compensation compared to benefits. That you probably know, especially for those working students, that our long term or how long we stayed in the company really affects our increase. It is if you are maybe 5 years on that company already, working for them, for that organization, and they are really successful enough with you, you're one of the assets, so you are probably one of the candidates to have that yearly increase. But budgeting compensation also needs understanding of the different compensation program, how it will benefit the employees, how the organization will gain from it, that's what I'm saying, and the opportunity costs for choosing one over another. So it is not just person 1, person 2 over person 3 and person 4. It should undergone with those kind of, checking of how long they've stayed or based on their performances. Absenteeism is good. They don't have many absences or something like consider while having the increase. And as you as an employee, you need to understand those basic rules as well. Managers and executives are tasked to do budgets every year, and each department gives financial runs to the controller. And as the manager of the human resource of personal management, he must decide the amount of the financial resources to be allocated toward compensation, staffing, and training. So that's it. That is our first topic, which is the managing the system. And it's very, very simple and easy to understand. If you have questions, just leave your comments now. Administration and the total pay model. Every organization needs a formal pay system. Why? Without it, the organization will have a chaotic array of rates. And I know you basically understand that. It is not person A having 450 per day, person B having 350 per day. That would make it more chaotic. Very easy to absorb, right? But managers will give everything on a whim or might pay people on whatever seemed to work at the moment. employees will be treated inconsistently and unfairly because they have same positions but different pay rates and benefits. This is my example earlier, like person 1 having 400 and plus, but person B having 300 and plus. That would really make it much, how can I say, complicated and chaotic. And what's more alarming is the manager might use pay to motivate behaviors that encourage selfish objectives not in line with those of the organization. So, hindi naman natin mapapagkakaila na if that person probably received 450, they might become boastful. But not in general. I'm not saying this in general because somewhat other people might be really motivated to do more of their work. But basically, it will be a competition between another person or another employee because you are receiving more of what they are receiving. So that would be a very big question mark. Now, to move forward, in the Philippines, contractualization became widely used in the 80s and 90s. However, as we embark on a new era, outsourcing is the system currently in use. Outsourcing means the organization secure a range of service from independent external vendors. Payroll processing is a common process to be outsourced here in the Philippines. Outsourcing is also a form of decentralizing decision making, and if this will not be closely monitored, corruption and possible financial manipulation may be committed. To help avoid this happening, compensation should be managed to achieve the objectives of the pay model: efficiency, fairness, and compliance. So I know that you merely understand everything there. And as you know, contractualization, like, 6 months or maybe 8 months, you are with a company and then you're going to be laid off or something. But right now, as they say, outsourcing is the new system that we are using. But total compensation management thus has to attend to these issues: managing labor costs, variable pay as a cost control, value-added returns on compensations, inherent controls, communication, and structuring the compensation function. So we need to remember all of those 6 issues. Okay? Now, let's go for managing labor costs. As we all know, labor cost is the cost of service rendered by an employee in completing a task for the organization. In managing labor costs, there are 3 main factors to control, and this will be illustrated in the formula. So we have a formula here. Try to imagine, and I will be illustrating it as well. Labor cost, let's say maybe this is equal to 400 pesos a day. Now, multiplied by average cash compensation, added by average benefit costs, where employment is equal to the number of employees and the hours they work. So how many hours do we usually work? That is 8 hours. That's the basic. And average cash compensation is equals to the wages, bonuses, and many more. Average benefit cost is equal to company benefits, health and life insurance, pensions costs, but we are going to stick up with mandated, which is the social security system, PhilHealth, or the Pag-ibig, we say so. But it depends on the company. Maybe they've got insurances that they will going to cover, or maybe any other benefits. So to begin with, if you are going to calculate that, that would be how can I say? Okay, let's say for example, that would be 400 per day. Oh, but before that, you need to be reminded, or you need to remember that it needs an agreement. So, like for example, you and your how can I say? There would be maybe 2 that you are going to hire, 2 employee. Kailangan meron kayong fixed agreement on such particular salary na dapat niyang matanggap. So, anticipated employees number plus the hours of their work, the daily paid, and it should be 8 hours. You should remember that. So, if we are going to think about, it depends kasi. If they've got the agreement, which is what we call pakyawan, so that is another subject for another agreement. That is another way around. But we are going to stick on the daily rate. So, example, 400 per day. We are going to have 2 employees at this very moment. Just an example. So we are going to calculate the average benefit cost. So we are going to stick up with the with the mandatory benefit, which is the SSS, Pag-ibig, and PhilHealth. So if we are going to have 400 per day, that would be multiplied by 26 days as well as the months, because they are going to ask for rest days as well. And then the benefits, you're going to add for it. So let's say, for example, for SSS, we are going to have 720 if the budget or if the bracket belongs to 10,000. And we are going to have 200 for Pag-ibig and another 150 for PhilHealth. So in total, we are going to have 11,470. That is all in all, the total for one person. And we are going to have two. That's why it's gonna be 22,940. And that would be your labor costs. So, labor cost is equal to employment. That is the rate, the daily rate to be exact, the average cash compensation, and the average benefit costs. So, the total is the labor cost. Why labor code? That would be 22,940. That is how we calculate it. Okay? Any questions? Drop down your questions on the comment box. Okay, now going forward for our controlling employment. The most common approach in managing labor costs is controlling the number of employees hired and the hours worked. So, hindi po pwedeng ako ngayon, tapos mag-overtime ako ng 5 hours ngayon kasi absent ako kahapon. So, it's not allowed. It's under our labor code. You can read that one. And paying the same wages to fewer employees is less expensive. However, as business become more and more complex, more employees are needed to take on those functions. We cannot limit the number of laborers at the expense of our employees being overworked. Layoffs and plant costing became also a choice of companies experiencing hard times. Managing labor costs is a greater struggle in such circumstances. So, in this controlling employment, this is the very common scenario that we usually experience, not just, how can I say, with small company, but this is very usual inside the department store area, because I have worked as a sales demonstrator before, to be exact, in SM. Nagsisimula pa lang si SM noon. And I am one of their sales demonstrator. And this is the controlling employment. This occurs when your brand is not profitable enough. Kapag hindi na siya kumikita ng marami at saka hindi na effective yung demonstrator, of course, we are going to replace them. But not in a very bad way. We need to follow rules as well. At first, we are going to, persuade them to gain more so that makakapagpasahod pa rin si company sa inyo. Pero, if hindi talaga effective, ayun, magbabawas talaga. So, nagkakaroon siya ng layoff. Yun yung tinatawag na hanggang dito ka na lang talaga, hindi ka na pwedeng mare-renew kasi nga gipit na si company, hindi kakayanin. So, sa bandang ganon, magkakaroon talaga ng pagbabawas. So, dahil bumaba yung kita ni company, di babawasan din yung empleyadong pasasahuran. Kasi nga, nagkakaroon na ng shortage, hindi na siya pantay. Kumbaga, hindi na kumikita na marami si company, so hindi na talaga makakompensate ni company yung mga kakailanganin ni employee. So, in this very moment, magkakaroon talaga siya ng issue. So, sa akin naman noon, fortunately, maganda naman yung kita, so nakapag-hire kami ng isa. So, kapag maganda yung kita, madadagdagan din yung tao. Kapag syempre, umaapaw yung kita, madadagdagan talaga. Or else, magkakaroon ka ng overtime. So, kahit na ayaw mo mag-overtime minsan, kailangan mo. Kasi nga, peak hour or peak season, kailangan mo yung, kailangan ni company yung iyong serbisyo. Kaya doon, napapasok yung overtime. Pero kapag hindi naman peak hour, meron din gusto mag-overtime, pero di naman din pwede. Kasi nga, walang kita sa araw na yun, tapos mag-overtime ka, parang expenses na ni company yun. Yung parang, parang, kumbaga, wala na nga siyang, walang pumasok sa kumpanya, pero may ilalabas siya kasi nga ibibigay niya sa iyo pasahod mo. Which is, pwede naman sana hindi ka nag-overtime kasi meron naman yung isang employee. So, parang nag-i-exceed na siya. Okay, to continue, many employers buffer themselves from layoff. So, yun yung sinasabi ko, by establishing different relationship with different group of employees. Finale ng ating controlling employment. Yun na yun. Kung may mga, if you have any questions, you can drop down your questions again, and we are very free to answer your concerns. Now, we are going to move on with hours. Firms often define employment in terms of hours of work rather than the headcount of its employees. It is common in the Philippines that our workforce spends 8 to 9 hours in the workplace. And if there are deadlines to meet, overtime is definitely the resulting thing to do. Hence, another approach to control labor costs is to examine paying for overtime hours. Overtime hours are paid with premiums. Thus, higher overtime hours means higher labor costs. It is a good way to regulate overtime hours and check the overtime of employees were not for note. So, this is what I'm saying earlier. I mean, particularly with overtime, hindi po pwedeng, if gusto mong mag-overtime ngayon, pwede kang mag-overtime. Depende pa din yun. Kasi kailangan mong magpaalam if peak hour ba ngayon? Kailangan ba talaga ng tulong mo? So, I am giving my example, my own self-example. Kasi, there are times that hindi ako pwedeng pumasok sa isang araw o nagkasakit ako ng isang araw. Gusto kong makover yun ng overtime ko. Pero, hindi po pwede kasi nga, hindi siya peak hour. At saka, meron akong karelyebo. So, yung karelyebo ko naman, siya naman din yung maiiwan kapag hindi ako nag-overtime. Kasi, kapag nag-overtime ako, ang mangyayari is, dalawa na yung babayaran ng company. At that time, hindi naman gaanong kumikita si company at that particular day. So, ang kailangan gawin is, mag-overtime sa peak hour or peak season. Anyways, alam nyo na yan kasi nga natutunan na din natin yan sa mga nakaraang lectures na atin ni ma'am. So, at saka ni ma'am, at saka ni sir, or sino bang naging nyo. Alam nyo na yan kasi we are also working already, and some of our classmates naman din, kung hindi man sila nagwo-work, may alam na din sila, alam ko yun. Pero if you have any questions, you can drop down your questions, and watch out for my next reporter. She will be continuing and she will explain as well all the things that you are maybe concerned with. After this, she will be explaining controlling average cash compensation.
My report is about controlling average cash compensation. Average cash compensation includes average salary plus variable compensation such as bonuses, gain sharing, profit sharing, and etc. There are two approaches to manage adjustments to average salary level: the top-down and the bottom-up. Top-down is a budgeting approach in which upper management determines pay and allocate it to each sub-unit. Meaning, si top management ang nagde-decide magkano ang budget per department. Kasali na doon kung magkano yung increase na ibibigay per department. For example, si operation department, meron silang 1 million na additional allocated para next year. Same thing with the accounting department, sa motor pool department, and sa iba pang department. Ngayon, per department, si manager na ang magde-decide kung magkano ang ibibigay niya na increase or uniform increase ba in terms of percentage sa bawat empleyado na under sa kanyang departamento. There are several factors that influence the increase in the average pay level. Number one is the current year's rise. This is the percentage by which the average wage changed in the past year. Meaning, na ay pattern, like, kung pila ang iyang gi-increase last year. The formula would be percent of level rise is equals to the average pay at the year end minus the average pay at the beginning times 100 divided by average pay at the beginning of the year. For example, nag-increase siya og 10,000 pesos. Previously, ang iyang sweldo is 5,000. To make it easier, 10,000 minus 5,000 is 5,000 of course. Times nimo sa 100, that makes it 500,000. Then if divide nimo sa 5,000, which is ang iyang previous na salary, then mo come up ka sa answer na 100% ang iyang naging salary increase. But in reality, dili jud, well, it's very rare nga na company maghatag og 100% na increase. Usually, pinaka-common jud, like diri sa Jensen, nasa mga 10%, some gani, 5% ra jud, 20%, 25%, and I think pinakadako na yun ng nasa 30-35% ang increase in every year. Very rare lang nga si company abruptly mohatag og 50% nga increase. The next one to consider is the ability to pay. This is the employer's capability of supporting its employees. Financially healthy employers often give bonuses and share profits with their employees, giving them competitive position in the labor market. Every year, si employee mo demand man jud na og higher salary. But as HR personnel, it is our job to evaluate kaya ba ng company to provide a higher salary. We have to consider the financial capability of the company. For example, for this year, isa sa mga company that I hold is the AYEC in Iloilo. It is a passenger boat, so the captain, the service crew, the oiler, and the rest of the employees are demanding for a higher salary next year. And also, bonus kay, syempre, pandemics, they need money. But as much as I want to say yes, dili pwede. It is because ang financial status sa company is down. To think na nag-declare me og 6 months floating status. Floating status meaning Y operation. Y operation, no work, no pay. And for this year, naka-operate lang me from January to March. And if you would to see the financial status, ang mga expenses monthly mo range up to 200 to 250,000 or more. And then, kasali na diha ang salary. And then, ang ilahang income a month na lang sa mga 20,000. So, if you would to analyze it, negative kaayo. Actually, pwede na mag-declare og bankruptcy. So, bisan gustuhon sa company na hatagan og increase the employees, dili kaya nun sa budget ni company. Of course, there are companies na kaya pa rin to sustain. Like in fishing companies, sa amuang company karon, medyo abonda ang isda. So, we could not say to the employees nga no, kay because sa financial status ni company, kay it's very obvious na kaya ni company maghatag og profit sharing. It's because very visible nga daghan og isda. So, case-to-case basis ang paghatag nato og increase o ang mga other bonuses. Depende sa kakayahan ni employer. Another thing to consider is the competitive market pressure. This is determining the organization's competitive position in relation to its competitors. Last year, masyadong hit ang Build program ni Duterte. So again, I am holding a construction company, a AAA construction company. So, if meron sa inyo makaka-relate, those who are related to construction companies, masyadong uso ang sulutan ng employees. So, during that time, like last year, hindi mo pwedeng kunin ang mga operators, engineers, foreman from the other companies kung hindi ka mag-o-offer ng mas malaking salary sa kanila. Dahil nga sa Build program ni Duterte, kailangan naming magkaroon ng mga sapat na tao para matapos ang specific project. For example, last year, ang operator namin nagre-range ang salary from 400, 500, 600, up to 750 pesos per day. Hindi kami pwedeng bumaba doon sa mga competitors namin. kasi kapag bumaba kami ng sweldo, kasi nga yung ating minimum last year, if I'm not mistaken, nasa 311 lang. Ngayon, di kami pwedeng bumaba doon sa mga pasahod ng aming competitors. Kasi ang mangyayari niyan, kapag masyadong maliit yung aming sahod, aalis sa amin yung mga empleyado namin at lilipat sa ibang construction companies. So, kailangan naming makipagkompetensya in terms of salaries and other benefits. Ganyan kahigpit noon sa construction company. So, kailangan mong i-consider magkano yung binibigay ng mga competitor mo. Mas malaki ba sila doon? Mas maraming bonuses, mas maraming leave, and etc. Next one is the turnover effects. These recognize the fact that when people leave, they are replaced by employees who earn a lower wage. It's not, meaning, hindi possible na, or it is not automatic na kapag si manager nag-resign, let's say, si manager may sahod siya na 50,000 pesos, yung magre-replace sa kanya, automatically 50,000 din yung magiging sahod niya. Usually, kapag nire-replace si employees, yung nagre-replace sa kanya, mas mababa yung sahod. Again, case-to-case basis ha, may mga instances din naman kasi na yung pinapalitan, ipapalitan ng mas malaking sahod dahil sa skills or sa mga kakayahan niya, which is subject for top management approval. But commonly, kapag may nag-resign, yung papalit sa kanya, mas maliit na yung sweldo. Dahil of course, nasa probationary period pa lang siya. Kapag pumasa siya doon sa probationary period, well, probably, tataas din yung sweldo niya, same nung sweldo nung pinalitan niyang empleyado. Another thing is the cost of living. Employees tend to look at their expenses in considering jobs and compare their pay increases to change in their cost of living. As employees, of course, we are working to compensate our daily needs, our daily wants. So kapag naisip natin na hindi na kinakaya ng sahod natin or masyado nang maliit yung sahod natin, ang daming trabaho, but then hindi kayang suportahan yung ating pang-araw-araw, the tendency is the employee maghahanap ng ibang trabaho. So isa yan sa mga dapat i-considerar ni HR, na kaya pa ba ng sahod ni employee yung kanyang pang-araw-araw, especially if asset yan ni company. Dapat i-check yan kung yung sweldo niya ba ay sasapat. Like kung ikaw manager and then ang sweldo mo nasa 336, I think that would not be enough, considering you need some other load allowance and mga representation kapag meron kang meeting. Isa yan sa mga dapat i-consider ni HR, na dapat natatanggap ni employee yung tamang pasahod, yung tamang benepisyo based doon sa trabahong binibigay niya o sa level ng trabaho that the company demand. A variety of methods exist for determining what percentage of the budget each manager should receive. Managers often use a uniform percentage, however, others strategically allocate them based on pay-related problems such as turnover or performance, which have been identified in the subunits. As I said a while ago, most common is ang binibigay ni manager is uniform increase para walang inggitan, walang mga issues and other concern. But also, there are times na kailangan din consider ni manager yung mga previous issues, like kunyari, may na-increasean pero hindi naman deserving, or hindi naman din siguro fair na lahat sila makakatanggap ng, like, let's say 25% increase in a year, and then here comes another employee na mas umangat talaga, na mas nagpe-perform ng tama i-compare doon sa iba. So isa yan sa mga dapat i-consider ni manager. Next is the bottom up. Bottom up is a budgeting approach in which individual employees pay for the next year as forecasted and some to create an organization salary budget. Kabaliktaran ni top down, si top down, si management yung nagde-decide pababa doon sa subunit. Dito sa bottom up, magsisimula yung proposal sa pinakababa and then pataas subject for approval ni top management. there's forecasting cycle sa bottom up. There are steps. Number 1, you should instruct managers in compensation policies and techniques. Train the managers to follow concepts of pay for performance. You should tell your managers the way that they should decide kung sinong dapat i-increase, saan dapat i-allocate yung budget based on the salary structure of the company. Hindi pwede na si manager magde-decide lang ang kanyang increase dahil mas malapit sa kanya, mas sip-sip, mas kahit ano pang unbiased na rason. Dapat naka-base pa rin doon sa company policies yung magiging desisyon ni manager. Number 2 is distribute forecasting instruction in worksheet. Provide managers with instruction necessary to pre-plan the increases. Offer them support like computer software to help them analyze information and aid them in their forecasting. Usually si top management, binibigyan din niya ng suporta yung mga managers paano mag-decide kung paano mag-increase ang mga empleyado or paano mag-propose ng kanilang yearly budget. In our case, previously, pina-attend kami ng seminar conducted by the PMOP. Sa seminar na yon, tinuruan kung paano ba mag-increase, saan dapat i-base ang increase, performance versus security of tenure, and etc. So, kapag nag-decide si manager, dapat lahat ng factors i-consider nila. So, kung kailangan ng support from the top management, dapat ibigay yon para walang unbiases. And then, provide consultation to the managers. Offer advices and salary information services to managers. Some companies have retainers. These are yung mga binabayaran nila monthly for consultation. Mga consultants such as company lawyer or person from the DOLE. Para kung whatever ma-decide ni manager, kung sakasakali hindi lahat mabibigyan ng increase, pwede siyang humingi ng payo, hindi ba niya ma-violate yung ating law or wala bang pwedeng ma-counter si employee just in case hindi mabigay yung kanyang gustong increase. And then check the data and compile reports. It is a protocol to audit increases forecasted to ensure that they are appropriate and they follow the pay guidelines of the company. Kung meron ng proposal, nakapag-decide na si manager kung sino yung mga dapat increasean, magkano yung budget na dapat hingihin, then they should collect the data. For example, kailangan alamin ni manager kung magkano yung naging increase last year, sino yung mga bago pa lang, sino yung dapat i-increasean, sino yung aside from increase, dapat may natatanggap na ibang benefits. Dapat lahat ng data na kukonsider. As I said, dapat lahat ng issues natutugunan ni managers. Kasi kung hindi, later on, kapag na-implement na, dyan yun mag-aaray sa mga miscommunication. And then, analyze forecast. Examine each manager's forecast and recommend change if any. Kapag meron ng proposal si manager, of course, ipapasa sa top management or kay HR muna para i-revise. Kapag nakita na parang ito hindi pwede, ito parang tagilid. So, ibalik mo yun sa manager, sir, kailangan natin i-revise to. Baka kasi conflict sa ating budget or conflict sa ganitong empleyado or baka magkaroon tayo ng problema. And then, kapag na-revise na, review and revise forecast and budget with the management. Yun na yung time na parang kung sa college pa na defense. That's the time na i-sasubmit na nila kay top management yung kanilang forecasting subject for top management approval. Dito na makikita like i-defense nila kung bakit eto yung increase, bakit eto na budget yung gusto naming hingin. Ano yung pros and cons ng kanilang budget. And then si top management ang magde-decide kung i-grant ba yung request na yun o hindi. And then conduct feedback with management. Si management kapag si top management kapag nagkakaroon ng mga or mayroong mga proposal from the subunits, of course si top management yung magde-decide niyan. And in deciding, kailangan niya ding i-consider yung mga subunits. Kung i-approve niya si like operation head from the motor pool, kung i-grant niya yung request niya na increase, hindi ba magsiselos yung kabila? Or is it justifiable ba yung increase na hinihingi ni Motorpol? Mga ganung bagay na dapat i-consider ni top management. And then, monitor budgeted versus the actual increase. Usually talaga, si top management, meron na yung allocated budget. Like, magkano lang yung budget sana for this year. Ngayon, i-weigh yan nila kung si allocated budget versus the actual increase, kakayanin ba ni company, kakayanin ba ni management. Hindi naman kasi pwede na dahil pinopose ni manager, agad aaprubahan niya ni top management. Ang daming dapat i-consider. Ngayon, kung kakayanan ni top management, kakayanin ni company yung increase na propose ni manager, saka pa yan maa-approve at mabibigay yung desired na budget nila for next year. This approach to pay budgeting requires that managers plan the pay treatment for each of their employees. It decentralizes the work for pay management. However, there is control since top management is able to review and recommend changes to the forecast. Sa bottom up, it does not mean na ang may control is yung manager, yung subunits. Kasi, 'di ba, sa last process, si top management pa rin ang magde-decide kung i-grant o hindi yung proposal ni manager. What is the advantage of top-down versus the bottom-up? Si top-down, si manager yung nagde-decide kung magkanong budget ang i-allocate kay bottom-up sa mga subunits, Dahil doon, mas nagiging cost-effective yung pagbabudget ni top management. Ang problema sa top-down approach is hindi nakikita ni top management yung actual work ni subunit. Usually, nabibase lang nila yung kanilang budget based sa performance last year or based sa mga reports na submitted ni subunit. But the actual work itself, hindi na nakikita yon ni top management. So meaning, there are possibilities na sa actual work, may mga expenses na pwedeng i-incur na hindi masasali sa budget. Kasi nga, yung pag-sum ni top management is based sa performance or sa documents na submitted ni subunits. Sa bottom naman na approach, sa bottom-up approach, lahat ng issues nakikater doon Kasi nga, si subunits no gumawa ng proposal. Lahat ng expenses from their daily activities, nakukonsider doon sa bottom-up. But, mas costly yun compare sa top-down approach. Kasi sa bottom-up, nakikita lahat ng expenses sa day-to-day na ginagawa ng mga employees. So most probably, there are times na lumalagpas tayo doon sa allocated budget ni company. Next topic would be the inherent controls. There are two different aspects of control on managers' pay decisions. One, controls that are inherent in the design of the techniques. And two, formal budgeting process. Controls are embedded in the design of these techniques to ensure that the decisions are directed towards the pay system's objectives. Some popular controls are, number one is the range maximum and minimum, meaning nagsiset sila ng minimum to maximum salary range. These ranges set the extreme amounts to be paid for specific work. The maximum range represents the highest value of an employee may be paid based on his output, which is measured in its worth with the organization. Meaning, usually, the private companies have this salary range. For example, sa HR officer, usually the range would be, in big companies, usually it range into 20 to 30, up to 40,000 or up. It would depend based on your performance and experiences. Sa government, meron silang tinatawag na salary grade based sa iyong posisyon. May sarili din yan silang patakaran sa kanilang increase at may pinagbabasihan sa kanilang salaries. Another one is the comparisons or comparison of ratios. These are range midpoints which reflects the pay policy line of the employer in relationship to external competition. Compa ratio is calculated using the formula compa ratio is equals to average rate actually paid divided by range midpoint. For example, if ang isa ka specific job, ang iyang salary range would be 10,000 to 20,000 and the midpoint would be 15,000. Then currently, ang iyang actual ginadawat is 9,000. To compute the compa ratio, you get the actual paid, which is 99,000 pesos. Divided by 15,000, you will come up with 0.6. It is below 1. A compa ratio lower than 1 means that the employees receive less than the intended policy. There may be several reasons which affect, like majority of the employees may be recent hires or have poor performance. Kapag after sa imong computation, like katong example kaganina, below 1 siya, meaning wala siya ni silod sa katong salary range nga 10,000 to 20,000. Most probably, base, napa siya sa probationary period. Or maybe, kaya wala siya na-increase, it is because medyo dili nasa standard ang iyahang performance. But, kung magawa sa imong computation, there is more than one possible, meaning, sulod siya sa salary range. There are also instances that when you compute, like, ang iyahang actual range is, actual salary is 20,000, and then, of course, ang magawas ana sa imong computation is 2. Then, more than 1. Meaning, ni-exceed siya sa salary range ni employer. Usually, it occurs when that employee has several skills which the company consider him or her as an asset, or naga-exceed iyang performance sa standard na ginaset ni company. That's why gihatagan siya og much bigger salary compare sa katong nakaset na salary range standard ni employer. Another one is the variable pay. The essence of variable pay is that it must be earned each period. However, although this might be advantageous due to the employer, it may be less appealing to the employees. The inherent financial security built into variable plans may adversely affect employees' financial well-being. Variable pay are like profit sharing, gain sharing, or usually sa mga companies na naay gina-reach nga quota. Every year, na sila gina-set nga goals. Kapag na-reach ng goal na, that's the time mo incentivize the employer. Dili, as the word it say, variable, meaning dili siya fixed. Every year, pwede siya mag-vary. Ang amount, dili siya fixed. It would depend sa income sa company, pilay percentage gihatag sa imuha, or sa quota nga nakuha ni company. And then, the last one would be analyzing the costs. Costs differ in behavior. These are value-adding costs and there are non-value-adding costs. In every compensation decision, the cost impact of proposal should be considered. Kapag naghatag kag salary sa isa ka tao or nagpropose kag budget sa isa ka bagay within the organization, dili na maghatag og budget or it will not be granted by the top management kung walay makuha si organization or si company in return. For example, i-analyze nimo imong cost. Like, muhire kag isa ka tao. This isa ka tao, daghan siya skills. For example, a licensed civil engineer. Aside sa licensed civil engineer siya, let's say nata sa construction company, aside sa civil engineer siya, master electrician, master plumber pa gyud siya, material engineer pa siya. Meaning, he is almost 4 in 1. Dili na nimo need mag-hire og isa ka master plumber, master engineer, or material engineer kasi katong mga certificate na nasa isa ka tao. So, pwede ka mas makatipid dito. Like, let's say, sweldoan nimo siya og 100,000 or 50,000, much lesser lang gyapon ka kaysa mag-hire ka og 5 ka tao nga may different skills. Sometimes it is also important that you value quality rather than quantity. But there are also times na, mas importante po ang quantity o dili kay later on na. Of course, importante ang quality but later on na. Like as I said sa mga construction company. Bisan unsa ka maayo ang engineer, dili man pwede na siya mo trabaho sa isa construction. Of course, mas daghan ang tao mas maayo. Like dapat ang mga skill, isa ka foreman, pila ka tao. So ikaw magbana-bana. Ang always lang yun nato i-remember is that si company, si organization, mugasto na siya. Like ipadala baka ka sa training or unsa pang klase na gasto. Mugasto siya knowing that na ay return of investment mo balik sa iyaha. Dili ta basta magpataka la gasto. I-analyze nimo ang cost para unsa ni nga cost. Mas mahal, mas maka-benefit ba si company or mas mura pero dili maka-benefit si company. In every decision that we make, we always assure that si company na ay makuha, dili lang si employee ang mag-benefit, kundi it is a win-win solution nga both the employer and the employee would benefit.
Good morning, I'm Emilito M. Bon Jr., the third and final reporter on our group in managing total compensation and other related matters. At this moment, I'm about to share to you three things. First thing is compensation as measure of communication. Second thing is pay as change agent in restructuring. And the last one is structuring the compensation function. Let's get started. Number one, compensation as a message for communication. First thing, the compensation talks about here is the possible increase on your salary. It says here that compensation communicates. But the question is, how does it possible? Is it possible? Well, compensation gives signals to what is important and what is not important. Let me give you an example. If you will receive a pay increase for 1 more year experience on your job, that 1 more year is important. Kasi makakatanggap ka ng increase after that year. Right? Meron pa tayo sa example, yung promotion. If you will receive increase after your promotion, syempre, matik yun. Dahil promotion yun, kaya makatanggap ka ng possible increase. Increase talaga yun. So, yung pag-step up mo from here to here is important. May possible kasi na hindi ka na mag-go, ganyan. Pero, pag na-realize mo na important yun, kasi may increase. Dahil sa increase, ma-realize mo na important yung pag-step up mo, yung promotion mo. Kasi nga, may increase. Diba tayo, nagtatrabaho tayo para tayo ay masweldohan o kumita in exchange to our efforts or to our services. Diba? There are two reasons why pay information should be communicated. First thing is to encourage productivity and encourage effective performance ng mga employee towards their work. Kasi, pag nalaman nila sila ay subject for increase or subject sila for promotion, yung employee na yun, pahalagaan nila yung another 1 year na kailangan nila i-google. Kasi, after that year, mag-i-increase yung sahod nila. Or for the employee na subject for promotion, pagbubutihan niya lalo yung trabaho niya pagka na-subject siya for promotion or na-promote siya. Kasi na-encourage may increase siya and bigger opportunity, di ba? Kaya kailangan nilang malaman yun. Second reason is that para hindi sila ma-misinform. Kasi kailangan nilang malaman na sila ay subject for promotion. Di ba? And hindi rin sila ma-misperceive towards the compensation system or pay information. Kasi yung compensation system, hindi dapat maging unfair. Kasi sometimes, dumarating na yung mga employee kasi, encourage sila na mag-increase yung sahod nila for ganyan, certain years, ganyan. So, ina-expect nila yon. pagpasok pa nila sa trabaho, alam nila na gano'n yung sistema. Then, after several years, yung isang employee hindi nag-i-increase. Ibig sabihin, makakaramdam yan siya na unfair yung compensation system nila. Lalo kung nagpe-perform na maayos yun. Kung nagpe-perform siya ng maayos, tapos, wala siyang nare-receive na increase, masasabi niya unfair yung compensation system ng company. Kaya ganun yun. So, merong 6 stages or process sa pagbibigay information sa mga employee na ginagamit ngayon sa industry or sa mga businesses na nag-i-exist sa ating panahon ngayon. So, yung una is know your objective or defining the objective. Sa objective na to, ano ba yung dahilan bakit ka gagawa ng session about communication sa pay system or pay information ng inyong company? Bakit nyo gagawin? Meron bang pagbabago sa pay system or compensation system? O pag sabihin natin gano'n yung magiging topic, yun yung goal bakit nyo gagawin ng session na information or communication with the employee. Yung may pagbabago sa compensation system. Second is know the situation or collect data, collect information. Alam mo may sitwasyon, bakit nangyari, bakit may pagbabago. Diba? Sasabihin mo kasi sa session or sa implementation ng communication mo sa mga employee. Bakit, anong dahilan? O sabihin natin bakit nagbago yung compensation system. Kasi po, ganyan. Bumaba yung sales natin, ganyan. Katulad na lang ngayon, napaka-timely pandemic. Most of the businesses, makaramdam sila ng pagbaba ng kita. Siyempre, kasi dahil bumaba ang operations nila, bumaba yung kita nila. So, may pagbabago yan sa kanilang mga compensation system. Mamaya mapag-aaralan pa natin yan. So, number 3 or third step is developing the strategy. Developing the strategy talks about paano mo gagawin yung pakikipag-usap mo about this informing your employee. Isipin mo yung mga pamamaraan mo kung anong gagawin ninyo. Yun. Number 3 stage yun. So, number 4 stage is determining the media. Alam mo yung mga tools na gagamitin mo for this activity. Kasi kakailanganin mo ba ng mga papers, mga modules, or mga manuals, or anything. Kailangan mo ba ng project or all the medias you need in conducting this activity. So, 5th stage is conducting the sessions. So, conducting the sessions, how would the session be implemented? No? What should be detailed and what should be given emphasis? So, the session, importante ito sa 6 na stages kasi yung session na to, dun mo sasabihin kung ano yung kailangan mo ibigyan din, ano yung emphasis mo. For example nga, di ba, ang topic natin, yung objective natin is meron tayong pagbabago sa compensation system. Sasabihin natin yan sa mga employee. Ngayon, ano yung dapat mong bigyan din? Ngayon, ang bibigyan natin ng din is mawawala yung allowances nila sa mga taong, sa mga employee na may allowances kasi ganito, ganyan. Nasa-short tayo sa budget for allowances, ganyan. Kasi naghihirap yung business, ganyan. Mga ganun. Bibigyan mo ng diin yung pinakadahilan kung bakit kayo nag-uusap at kayo pag-uusap sa mga employee ninyo. Yun yung dahilan. Yun yung pinakamalaga yung session. How you will implement the session. 6th stage is the last stage, the evaluation. maggawa ka ng evaluation kung nasabi mo ba talaga yung main objective mo, bakit mo ginawa yung pakikipag-usap sa employee mo about the pay information or the compensation system ng company ninyo towards your employee. Kung nasabi mo ba talaga lahat, kung nabigyan mo ba ng linaw yung pinaka gusto mong sabihin. So, move on naman tayo sa topic number 2, which is pay as changing agent in restructuring. When organization restructure, it means that the business strategies are changed. Ano bang restructuring? Yun yung reorganizing ng organization, o kumbaga nagbabago yan sila sa mga certain reasons. Kunyari, ang reason is yung pandemic, yan, yung pagbaba ng sales nila. Or restructuring, gumawa sila ng restructuring or reorganizing kasi hindi nila masustain yung competition or masyado marami rin yung kakompetensya nila. Kaya ganun. Pero mag-focus tayo dun sa compensation system lang. Kumbaga sa payment lang or sa compensation ng mga employee. Bale, yung restructuring kasi, nangyayari yan, pwedeng may magandang progress yung company. Kaya nagre-restructure sila or nagre-reorganize sila para baguhin yung compensation system ng company o mag-iaakyat. Pero may kabaliktaran nun, restructuring, nagre-restructure sila kasi medyo mahina yung operation ng company or nahihirapan yung company maipag-compete sa mga competitors, sa sobrang daming competitors. Kaya nagre-restructure yan sila. Nagiging negative naman yung epekto nyon sa compensation system. So, sabi dito, ang compensation, yung role ng compensation or yung payment sa mga empleyado, nagiging possible, maging catalyst siya or follower of change. Ano ba ang catalyst? Something nagpapa-boost sa mga employee. Kumbaga, pag possible na ang restructure is positive or progress, yun yung nangyayari sa employee. Nagbibigay catalyst sa kanila, nabuboost sila na mag-work or mag-stay sa company. Kasi nga, yung company nag-i-step up. So, pag restructure naman na following the followers of change, kumbaga negative yan. So, pababa yung company. Nagre-restructure yung company kasi i-adjust nila yung compensation system. For example, yung during this pandemic, yung sinabi ko nga kanina na pag-aaralan natin, during this pandemic, bumaba yung operation ng mga company or mga businesses. So, pag bumaba yung operations nila, humina yung operations nila, bababa rin yung possible sales nila or income nila. So, pag bumaba yung possible sales or income nila, yung compensation system ng mga employee is apektado rin. For example, so on my experience, yung company namin during this pandemic, na nag-resume tayo after lockdown, yung allowance ko na natatanggap na dati, na okay pa ang business sa ating bansa, sa Pilipinas, okay, meron na ako tatanggap na allowance. Then, nung nag-resume na ang operation after pandemic or nung May 4, ganyan, tumawag sa akin yung boss ko na wala na yung tatanggalin muna yung allowance namin for allotted para sa position ko, ganyan. So, halos lahat kami, whole Philippines na same ng position ko na wala ng allowance. So, ganun yung ginawang restructure na company ko. At bumagsak din sila sa point na para ma-adapt namin o ma-sustain namin yung living namin, yung daily life namin. Nag-file sila sa mga SSS and PhilHealth pag-ibig na foreclosure or ganyan para hindi mo na sila mag-subject for contribution. Kumbaga, yung pinapasok namin, sinasahod namin ng buo para masustain yung living ng mga employee nila. Yun yung ginawa nilang restructure sa compensation system namin nung panahon na yan. para masustain yung living. Tsaka yung mga employee, hindi sila kapusin. Siyempre kasi, kung maliit na nga lang ang pasok ninyo, tapos apektado kasi sa pandemic. So, yung employee, sa sahod na maliit, yung sahod ng employee hindi sasapat sa daily living niya. Kaya ginawa siguro ng company namin yun na hindi mo na sila maghulog ng mga benefits. Yun yung naging restructure. So, okay, ako naman tayo sa number 3, which is structuring the compensation function. Ang responsible dito is the top management and the managers of the organization. Bago nila gawin ito, meron silang 3 bagay na dapat i-consider in making compensation function. Number 1 is centralization and decentralization. Number 2 is flexibility within corporate and wide principles. Number 3 is re-engineering and outsourcing. Yun yun. So, ang mga ginagawa nilang system, compensation system, ay kailangan meron mga ginagawa ang managers na system sa kanilang unit. Pero dapat align pa rin ito sa ginagawang sa organization system. Na yung mga managers, guided din yan sila ng mga principles and guidelines na ginawa ng organization para maka-align nga sila. So, nagbibigay ng limit ito sa mga powers ng mga manager in making the compensation function ng isang organization. So, yun.